So today we're going to think about acid rain, and this silly cartoon is not really very accurate. When we go out in the rain, we do not dissolve. Our skin doesn't disappear and cloth doesn't disappear. It's not quite that scary, but there are still serious consequences to acid rain. And when we look at these pictures should stimulate some thoughts. We have at the top here, we've got a statue that has disappeared. We have trees that are dying. We have a power station here releasing pollutants through this tall chimney. And we have car exhaust fumes. And these all link together with acid rain ideas. So let's have a think about how acid rain actually is. And on this image we have a pH scale, which is a measure of acidity, and we're going to consider 3 different types of water. Now, pure water actually has a pH of 7. That means that it is neutral. Normal rain is slightly acidic, but very weak acid, so only about a pH 6, which means that normal rain, as it falls through the air, picks up carbon dioxide and becomes very weakly acidic. Acid rain is 10 times more acid than normal rain. So it is pH 5. That is starting to cause some issues, not when it lands on our skin, but when it accumulates in the environment. So normal rain is slightly acidic because as it moves through the air, it picks up the gas carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide, when it dissolves, forms a really weak acid called carbonic acid. So normal rain is about 5.5 to pH 6, and that's just ordinary. But when we look at this picture, we can see that acid rain seems to come from pollutants. So over on the left-hand side, we've got an image that's trying to represent pollution. So we've got a truck burning fossil fuels in the form of diesel or petrol. We have cities releasing gases like sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxides. They dissolve in clouds. The clouds move over landscapes, and the rain that falls is acidic and will affect the landscape in terms of the plants and the waterways, and it'll eventually go into the oceans and cause effects in the oceans. So let's have a look at the kinds of pollutants that we can find. So this picture shows a coal-fired power station. So this is a power station making electricity, and it burns coal to do that. And the pollutants that we're looking at actually come out of the tall chimney here. And those pollutants will include gases that are able to dissolve in water in the clouds and release very strong acids. So these gases include sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide. So sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide, they dissolve in water to make this substance here, which is called sulfuric acid. And sulfuric acid is very acidic. So this comes from an impurity found in coal and also in petrol. So you can see with this next image a lot of exhaust fumes. When the internal combustion engine, or the engine inside your car, burns the petrol and diesel, the air in there that's being used to burn them also contains nitrogen. And the nitrogen will react with the oxygen inside the hot engine and produce a gas which dissolves in water to make nitric acid, and nitric acid is another very acidic solution. So if we allow these gas pollutants to go into the air, they will end up being moved by the wind from where they're made. So this diagram on the left shows where pollution is made. So we've got lots of pollution happening where there are lots of factories and lots of cars. So in parts of the the UK and in parts of Central and Europe there. And the wind takes the pollution, see the red arrows here, from the areas where the pollution's made and over to other countries. And you get a lot of problems in northern Scandinavia with acid rain landing in the lakes and in the forests. And this is the sort of effects we see. We see trees dying, but you can fix lakes. You can put some chalk powder or some limestone powder into the lakes to fix them, and that's what they had to do in Norway in 1973 when this became a really bad problem. So what are some of the other effects of acid rain? So we're going to consider all these different areas. In rivers and lakes, the water can become so acid that fish die. And they're not the only things that die. Other aquatic organisms will die, but then of course anything that eats the fish and relies on the fish as a source of food, that will also suffer, because we know all about food chains. In the soil becomes very acidic, and then the trees and the other plants that are growing, they can't take the nutrients from the soil, and then the acid rain can also wash from the soil into the waterways. So here are the trees. Not only do they struggle because they can't get nutrients from the soil, the leaves get damaged by the acid, and this prevents them from doing photosynthesis. Without photosynthesis, they can't grow very well. In our cities, we can also damage our buildings. So we've got a marble statue here that has been corroded away by the acid rain. Here is another statue, but of course buildings are made of limestone too, so the calcium carbonate reacts with the acid and it disappears and rots away. And metals react with acid as well, so anything that's made of metal, so cars or any structures that are made of metals like bridges, they can get eroded too. So acid rain, formed mostly by pollutants to make the acid more acidic than normal rain, will react with metals and with building materials, as well as changing the pH in the environment so that organisms die and can't grow.